These men are true Burns devotees, and they take turns to perform his work and other poems that they think Burns would have liked.
By virtue of the acerbic nature of Burns's tongue, he would also have appreciated "Once on a time, I fair Eusebia kissed, whose nose was too distinguished to be missed. Quoth I, sweet wench, fain would I kiss you closer, but though your lips say aye, your nose says no, sir." The maid was equally to fun inclined, and placed her lovely little hand behind. "Here, swain," cried she, "mayst thou securely kiss, where there's no nose to interrupt thy bliss."
The Crachan Fencibles were those who occupied fairly prominent positions in Edinburgh society of the day: writers of the Signet, rector of the high school, Latin master at the high school, governor of Edinburgh Castle. They were Fencibles. They last met in 1795, and in 1993 then the adjutant and myself decided that there should be a modern day equivalent of the Crachan Fencibles, hence the Crachan Fencibles 2nd Battalion.
No one would confuse this gathering with a rally on political correctness. But then, some of Burns's poems aren't the most politically correct either.
I think it's been pointed out already, Burns was a great lover of the lasses. He also did not thole the other side of women terribly well, and he gave this advice to the man who was unfortunate in the wife that he had. He says, "Cursed be the man, the poorest wretch in life, the crouching vassal o' a tyrant wife, who has no will but by her high permission, who has but sixpence but in her possession, who must to her his dear friend's secrets tell, who dreads a curtain lecture worse than hell. If such a wife were fallen to my part, I'd break her spirit, or I'd break her heart. I'd charm her with a magic o' a switch. I'd kiss her maids and kick that perverse bitch."
Listening to these entertaining gentlemen, I begin to wonder if there isn't a side to Burns, the less soothing side perhaps, that only appeals to men.
While we're doing it, I wrote a poem as well.
Would anybody care to take up the cudgels on behalf of Burns and yourselves in defence of Mail Company and its exclusive jokes?
He did it with tongue-in-cheek, I think, a lot of the anti-ladies. I know that when we all do Burns suppers, most of the Fencibles all perform at different times and in different ways at different suppers. But I think at the end of the day, we all appreciate that we couldn't live without the lasses. And I think Burns accepted that as well.
I think he summed it up in one of his earliest songs, which he never bettered. "All nature swears the lovely dears, her noblest work she classes o'er. Her prentice hand she tried on man, and then she made the lasses o'er."
Well,
that sums it up.
We'll start off Colcanny with a chorus, and then we can join in. He Jacobite Spain, and the Neil, and the Neil. He Jacobite Spain, and the Neil. He Jacobite Spain,
These men also celebrate Burns's musical side. The poet met a song collector at one such meeting, James Johnson, who would remain in Burns's life after so much of the Edinburgh glow had gone.
What is wrong? By the law, by the law. What is right, what is wrong? By the law.
As Burns lingered among the drinking clubs of Edinburgh, his mind was increasingly on what he'd do once the great mirage disappeared, when his season among the great men of his time was over. Edinburgh's grandees didn't really want him to stay. They wanted him to go back to the country, to return to that rustic life that had first inspired him. But Burns was in turmoil about that life. and about ever being able to support his family that way. He drifted back and forth from Edinburgh to Ayrshire, where he reconciled with his sweetheart Jean Armour. He toured the country collecting songs, but he couldn't settle. Then he did something really quite astonishing. At the height of his fame, he decided to try to join the Customs and Excise. He wrote to his Masonic friend Lord Glencairn, someone he knew who could pull strings for him, and he turned on the charm.
My lord, I know your lordship will disapprove of my ideas in a request that I am going to make to you. I wish to get into the excise. I am told that your lordship's interest will easily procure me the grant from the commissioners.
Burns puts the matter very strongly in the letter. He talks about the possibility of extraordinary distress or helpless old age, how they've often harrowed my soul with fears, he says. I've one or two claims on me in the name of father. Now that must be the understatement of the 18th century. This is a guy who had more than a few small claims on him as father. He had wains from one end of Ayrshire to the other, if some are to be believed. He's always mindful, Burns, that he has a duty of care to his family, and he's asking Lord Glencairn to put his affection for him to good use, to help Burns get a position in life that would actually let him pay the bills. This is a man who's been through all the trials and tribulations of the small farming life in Ayrshire. He really dreads the idea of going back to that. He knows it could be ruinous, it could be failure. So the excise offers a lifeline.
Poet Burns, with your priest's skelping turns, why desert ye your old native shire? Though your muse is a gypsy, yet were she even tipsy, she could cause nae war than we are, Poet Burns, she could cause nae war than we are.
The Edinburgh gamble had largely paid off, but Burns was once again at a crossroads. His rural roots were calling him back.
How mony hearts this day converse, O sinners and O lasses, their hearts so stained gen night are gain as saft as ony flesh is. There's some are full o' love divine, there's some are full o' brandy, and mony jobs that day begin may end in Hoch Magandie, some other day.
These men are trying to get a ham wrapped up in a sheet and nailed to the top of this greasy pole. This is one of the highlights of a fair that's been taking place in Irvine, near my hometown, since medieval times. Robert Burns would have known about this fair and fairs like it. They were the focus of community life in rural Scotland. In his early years, he had found great inspiration in this world. But the success of his first book of poems had lured him away to Edinburgh, and I think that as a poet, he had lost his way a bit there. He needed to be close to this carnival of Ayrshire voices to create his best work. Now Burns had several £100 in his pocket, and the acclaim of the great city of Edinburgh still echoing behind him. But all he could think about was how he was going to find a life of security for him and for his family. When he came back from Edinburgh, Burns married Jean Armour, his understanding Ayrshire sweetheart, the woman who later said that our Rabbi should have had 12 wives.
There is, you must know, a certain clean-limbed, handsome, bewitching young hussy of your acquaintance, to whom I have lately and privately given a matrimonial title.
Burns was loath to give up the chance or the idea of becoming a traditional, successful farmer.
This is Ellisland Farm in Dumfriesshire, which sits along the beautiful River Nith. Burns came here in the early summer of 1788, full of hopes. There was a new chapter in his life.